I'm going to take one of my minutes and tell you that there's a bag down there, and we can't sell t-shirts, but I stole 20 of them, and I'm going to let them go for $5 off. So if you want to see me afterwards, there are t-shirts for sale. Whenever I talk to a group of people that are potters, it's very special because you all understand. When you talk to people who are non-artists and non-potters, they never understand. There's a very famous potter that was very, very popular in Japan, National Shrine. For those of you under 40, I'm going to give you his name, Shoji Hamada. I was living in Japan in 1971, and my teacher, Kunio Chida, said that we'll be having a show in downtown Tokyo, and you may bring 20 of your pots to be exhibited in that show. And he said, I know you want to see Mr. Hamada, but I don't like Mr. Hamada because Mr. Uchida was a famous Kyoto potter, and he didn't like Korean pottery. But he said, I'll arrange it. So we went to Tokyo, we had our show, and he said, okay, tomorrow you can see Mr. Hamada. And he said, you will take this little girl, Sachiko, with you as your guide. And she's beautiful, bilingual. And I had just purchased a brand new Nikon camera. And this is a story about don't take the picture. Don't take the picture. Because something good will happen to you if you don't take the picture. But I was carrying my Nikon and some tools and things with me. We went up to Mashko, we got off the train, we walked down the road, and there was Mr. Hamada sitting in a beautiful Charles Eames lawn chair on his deck. And he disappeared. And I said to this young lady, I said, I'm going to put my camera and everything that we brought with us in the ditch. And she said, why? I said, I don't think this is the day to take pictures. And so I put my camera in the ditch. We went up to his house, we met him and his wife. We only spoke Japanese. We did all formalisms. We had a translator, and he winked at me and he said, nice touch with the pretty girl. He said, and I knew, of course, as many of you know, he has a PhD in ceramic engineering, and he spoke British English. I never expected him to say a word of English when I went. I thought, I'm going to get 10 minutes. At that moment, a van pulled up into his yard, and he said, oh no. And he went outside, and all I saw was strobe lights going off. And it was a group of Japanese businessmen who collected his work. And he said, no pictures, please, no pictures. Click, 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 click. No pictures. He said, I have a very famous American potter in my kitchen, and I have to spend the day with him. You'll all have to leave. No pictures. My camera saved me. He walked into the room and he said, my wife picked up your camera. Thank you very much. Can you stay the entire day? I said, well, of course I can stay. You know, sensei, of course, of course, of course. I stayed the entire day. We had lunch, we had dinner. I saw his entire collection because I didn't take his picture. You notice it's blank. So when you get to meet one of the most famous potters in the world, don't put your arm around him and say, Soji baby, how about a selfie? I'm going to introduce to you one of the finest women potters and firer of wood kilns in the United States. Many of you don't know her, but Cindy Hoskisson is a dear friend of mine, and her husband are wonderful friends, and she has fired the Nilslu Anagama how many times? A lot. And she has a daughter there who absolutely fired a kill at Nilslu's prenatal. Cindy Hoskisson.
These people are a hard act to follow. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Stephen? Which one? Ah, there it is. Okay, got it. Okay, this is East Creek. It was built by Nils Liu and his friends Tom Coleman and Frank Boyden back in the early 80s. My husband Don and I started firing there when the kiln was a year old. And I told Nils years later he made a big mistake. He came and invited us to be part of his crew, and after that he couldn't get rid of us. Sorry, better? So, I have what I think of as a lot of kiln lore stories that I tell. We have a lot of students that come to our firings and they want to know, what's the worst firing that ever happened? What's the worst thing that ever happened? And there are many stories that I can tell. I always think, should I tell the one about when the mice climbed in my hair and chewed in my hair when I was asleep, or, which way should I go? But really, the only story that really deserves to be told tonight is a story that happened in 2000. Was an interesting, kind of a hard year. Nils had taken sabbatical, and he had a show of his work that was going to be in Portland in the early spring. He had 100 pots that he needed to have in the show, and he'd taken the sabbatical to make this body of work. During that time, his first wife developed cancer and passed away. She died in November, and in February, Nils called me and said, okay, I've got to get these pots fired. The show's coming up, and I've got to get them done. And our firings usually end up being kind of a party atmosphere. Kind of a community atmosphere, I guess is more what I should say. He said, this is the group of people that I want. I don't want any, I just want it to be very quiet, very mellow. I just really need to have this done, and I don't want a lot of attention. I don't want to talk about any of it. And I said, Nils, I'll take care of it for you, I promise. So I set it up, we get going, and we fired at that time. We were firing the kiln about 70 hours per firing. We would start on Wednesday morning, and we'd shut down sometime after midnight on Saturday. If we were lucky, we would get cone 10 in the back. We were still struggling, not always getting the hottest temperatures in the back of the kiln. Now you can see it's a large kiln. It holds about 500 pieces. So it takes us a couple of days to load it. It's a pretty big adventure. So we get it going, and Friday morning, Nils came to me and said, I'm going to town. I've got some things to do. Town is 30 miles away. We can't get any cell service at East Creek, so he said, you're in charge for the day. I told him I'll take care of things. And we're going along, we're firing, everything's fine. About, it's early afternoon, and I'm up at the top of the kiln. Now, you can't really see in this picture, but there are 2 ports on each side. So when we're firing, there are 5 people around the kiln. Someone's stoking the front, and someone's stoking each of these side ports. So I'm in the side port, standing at the back of the kiln on this left-hand side, and the kiln is hot. I mean, it is hot. And I'm looking in the kiln, and it's cone 12's going down, and we're like 30, 35 hours into this 70-hour firing. And as I'm looking in the top of the kiln, one of our guys, a student named Jim, is down in the front, and he is, every time the door goes up, he's looking in the kiln, and he's looking up at me, and he's giving me this really puzzled look. And pretty soon I come down, and he comes over, and he says, Cindy, there's no pots in the front of the kiln. And I said, Jim, so not funny. And he said, no, there are no pots in the front of the kiln. So, I go over and look. We all go over and look. And he's right. All you can see is this big fireball. You can see a huge firebox. There are no pots in the front of the kiln. So, we talked about it. Everybody looked in the kiln. There's no, we kept going for a little while. We tried to get a hold of Nils. He's not answering his phone. And we have no choice. We shut down the kiln. We're worried about, I can still see in the back of the kiln, I can still see pots. I still know there's something there. We don't want to lose the shelves that we can see, so we shut it down. Nils came back. He said, you know, you absolutely made the right decision. We didn't, you know, there's nothing else you could do. We're all just sick. So we closed everything up. We cleaned up the site. And we've got all this food. We're thinking we're supposed to be there another 24 plus hours. So we all hiked up the hill to Nils' house and we had dinner. And you can imagine the mood. It was like a funeral. You know, we were all, you know, commiserating with each other. You don't want to talk about it. It's the only thing you can talk about. We get it all done, we go home, and then we wait the longest week of our lives. It's literally the longest week of your life. Now, you guys, every potter in this room knows what do you say about firing kilns. The best part is opening up. It's just like Christmas, right? Well, okay, Stephen, I hope I do this right. Down or up?
Right.
Nope. The other right. Oh. This is what I'm talking about.
Oh. Oh.
One thing I forgot to tell you the night we were having dinner, Nils and my husband Don and some of the other guys went down and took some pictures, and they were phenomenal pictures. You can imagine a kiln cooling down, and they got some pictures of the inside of that hot kiln that were amazing. So, Nils would have told you if he was here that in the front of the firebox, he found one of his pots that got buried and got covered by ash, and he sold it in his show for $1,500. Nils always said that you learn as much from your failures as you do your mistakes, and we learned a lot from this firing, and we changed a lot of what we did in our firings from this. And we did have some successes. There was quite a bit in the back of the kiln that we were able to save, but that is our kiln story. And next time I'll tell you about the mice in my hair.